2, 3, 4, 5. David Crisafulli, Jared Blay. I'm just going to go straight through there.
Is everyone happy? Give me a second.
Well, good morning, everybody. We wanted to take the opportunity to thank the people of the far north for the way that they have been willing to take forward their issues to us and have given us the opportunity to listen to them. In a word, this is the week that I wanted to give people of the far north hope. Hope. Hope that there was a better future for them and that we are serious about turning around the issues that matter to them. And that's why we have been diligent in talking about the services that people in the far north deserve and what that change looks like. And we have put forward our solutions every day of this sitting for things like housing, for things like health. We've spoken about transparency, but above all, it's been law and order where people of the far north have demanded solutions. And in a moment, the Deputy Leader will discuss what was a disappointing display last night and an opportunity to talk about those solutions for the youth crime crisis that is impacting the people of the far north. And the fact that those local members chose not to want to engage in that is deeply disappointing. We are serious about getting solutions to these issues that are impacting people of the far north. And so it was yesterday that we took up the fight, and we thanked the whistleblower who came forward and gave us this document. That's the sort of bravery that we are seeing across the state, where frontline staff who feel disempowered are taking the opportunity to raise their concerns with us, and we are listening to them. And we took their fight to the floor of the Parliament. And what this shows is that the culture that the Minister has overseen has been one where staff do not feel empowered to come forward and speak their mind. A culture where whistleblowers are suppressed, a culture where frontline staff's opinions don't matter. And we took the opportunity to raise that on the floor of Parliament. And for the Minister to firstly claim to be unaware of the document, and then the Deputy Premier to say that we were making it up. Imagine the slap in the face to people of the far north working in the mental health unit here, to be told that they were making up these issues of a document that we had been given thanks to those brave whistleblowers. We have put our solutions on the table to heal the Queensland health crisis, and it starts with better resources. It's also about better triaging, sharing data in real time. But the biggest gift we could give right now is to put local doctors and nurses back in charge. And this shows the rotten culture that the Minister for Health has overseen in hospitals across the state, including in the far north. Queenslanders deserve far better than they are getting, and this was the sitting that we want to give people of the far north hope that there is a better future, and we will continue to work to get the government to turn things around, and we'll be putting forward an alternate platform next year at the state election. I'll ask Pat to talk about one of the issues that he's pursuing, very important to the local tourism industry.
Thank you very much, and it's great to be here in beautiful Cairns. And one of the gems, or should be the gems of this region, lies just north of Cairns, and I refer to Double Island. But unfortunately it is in a serious state of neglect. During my visits up here, I've heard many stories about how the lease on Double Island, the commitments have not been met, the developments have not been done, it is overrun with weeds, and is basically off limits to the locals. I've asked the Minister questions about how this leaseholder still maintains his lease when he is in serious breach of the agreement, and received very unsatisfactory answers. I then asked for a parliamentary inquiry into the management of the islands of the Queensland coast, particularly in the Great Barrier Reef, and that trigger was Double Island. So one of the recommendations, there was 22 recommendations actually, it was a very damning committee report, but the very first recommendation states that if the leaseholder is in breach of the terms of his agreement, that lease should be cancelled. And this is a clear case of that. The lease owner on Double Island is in serious breach, so I'm calling on the Minister to show some action and cancel the lease on Double Island, and let's open this resort up, or this island up, for whatever the future may hold, but it cannot continue in its current decline. Thanks,
Well, thank you, Shadow Minister Pat Weir, and good morning, Jared Blade, Deputy Leader of the Opposition. We have had a great week in Cairns talking to the people of far north Queensland about the issues that matter, the issues like the youth crime crisis. Now, Labor would have us talking about everything else in Parliament but the youth crime crisis. And in extraordinary scenes yesterday in Parliament, of which I've not seen before in 14 years in Parliament, this is what happened. The LNP moved a motion condemning the Labor members in far north Queensland from Cook, Barron River and Cairns for their lack of action and the fact they are not listening to the people of far north Queensland in terms of the youth crime crisis. We took that to the floor of Parliament with a motion. And what did the Labor Party members do? Well, they couldn't just fight the motion on its merits. They couldn't get up, they didn't get up and talk about the issues that matter, like the youth crime crisis. They got up and in extraordinary circumstances amended the motion to pat themselves on the back. They amended the motion to congratulate themselves on their fantastic job that they're doing. Not only that, the member for Barron River moved the amendment himself. I have never seen such arrogance in the Queensland Parliament where a member of Parliament moves a vote of confidence in themselves. He could not even get one of his ministerial colleagues to move the motion and pat them on the back. He had to do it himself. That shows the arrogance of the Palaszczuk government. It shows the arrogance of the Labor Far North Queensland members of Parliament, from Cook to Barron River and Cairns. They all got up last night and they spoke in this motion, and all they did is talked about throwing money around like it was their own monopoly money. It was taxpayer money. And a government shouldn't be judged just on the amount of money they're handing back to taxpayers who have given the government the money in the first place. They should be judged on how they listen to the community. They should be judged on what they talk about in the Parliament. And not one member, not one Far North Queensland Labor member mentioned the youth crime crisis. In contrast, the Honourable Leader of the Opposition, David Crisafulli, and our fantastic candidate, Yolanda Yench, spent a morning talking to victims of crime, the real face of the youth crime crisis in far north Queensland. And not one Labor member in far north Queensland could bring themselves to mention the issue in the Queensland Parliament. Extraordinary circumstances where we gave them the opportunity to talk about the important issues to far north Queensland. And all they did is give themselves a pat on the back and congratulate themselves. That is a disgraceful level of arrogance that knows no bounds and epitomises the Palaszczuk Labor government. I'm going to hand over and thank our hard-working candidate for Cairns, Yolanda Yench, who is doing a fantastic job talking to real people in the far north Queensland region about real issues that matter and are impacting on people's lives right now. Thanks, Yolanda.
When the issue of youth crime came up in the Parliament, when a question was asked about youth crime, Anastasia Palaszczuk actually said it's already been discussed. There were members, there were Cairns people who were sitting in the gallery who got up and walked out silently, frustrated, disgusted. In Cairns, we have the highest rate of crime for any city in Queensland. I am absolutely disgusted that Michael Healy and Craig Crawford could think that what is happening at the moment in our city is acceptable, or even to go as far as congratulate themselves on the work that they've been doing. Every single day, I am hearing stories of people who are having their cars stolen, their houses broken into, some occasions both houses broken into and cars stolen, businesses that are being impacted. One business in Stocklands, in a 2-month period, his business was broken into on 8 occasions. Another business on Sheridan Street, last Friday, a rock thrown through her window and youth inside stealing and creating a mess. She then has to cancel a full day of appointments and then go through all of that heartache of then having the glazier out, the signage out. All of these things cost money. And we talk about the cost of living. Until we can address the youth crime in this city, our cost of living is going to continue to skyrocket. Enough is enough.
Well done, thank you. Over to you guys.
So firstly, it's obviously a disappointing reaction from last night, and what sort of solutions are you guys going to put forward to try and get on top of this?
Starts with consequences for actions, to put the rights of the victim ahead of the rights of the offender. Unshackling the judiciary and removing this nonsense of detention being a last resort, and gold standard early intervention to turn kids around. There are three things that the government could do immediately. Now, for 2 years, we put forward breach of bail as an offence for young offenders. For 2 years, we were mocked and derided. Every time we raised it on behalf of Queenslanders, the government said it just could not be done. At the 11th hour, in the middle of the youth crime debate, and our RTI documents show how shambolic this all was, but the government took our legislation word for word and put it into the Parliament. Now, we welcome that as the first very small step. But until you have those full suite of solutions, and until you turn around the fact that there are less police than 2 years ago, that breach of bail is only one very small glimmer of hope for Queenslanders. I really want the government to start listening. We've put forward solutions. Take them, put them in. Now, we're going to keep on working to make sure that we have the best early intervention, the best consequences for actions, and the best opportunity for our judiciary to do their job. But in the meantime, the government could start listening of their own. And if you want to know what listening looks like, it looks like hearing a motion and then debating on its merits. It doesn't look like amending the motion to tell everyone you're doing a great job. And during the course of the week, the Premier stood up and said her solutions are working. That is ashes in the mouths of every person in the far north who's picking up the pieces, as Yolandi have said, at home, at business. It's just a complete tin-eared approach.
So what's the cover of the Disability Royal Commission to Royce from Brisbane?
Yeah.
Does the state need to launch an inquiry into the matter? Should the Queensland government expand the powers of the Queensland Family and Child Commission to look at cases like this?
It's heartbreaking, and it's a failure of the highest kind. And those stories tug at the heart of everyone who wants to ensure that the least vulnerable in our society can get a chance in life. And to see how badly they were failed by so many people and so many levels of the state government is bitterly disappointing. Now, I'll make this point. The least these boys deserve, now young men, but the least these victims deserve is an end to the cover-up. And we've got to make sure that every piece of available information is put forward. They're owed that at least. They are soul-destroying images, and they're owed that.
And obviously, one of the questions is, what are your thoughts on the new youth detention centre that's been built at Woodford? Is this the right solution to fix the youth crisis?
I'll make some comments, and then I might ask the Deputy Leader to make some comments, because he's got some history around the youth detention centre proposal for Caloundra, which is right next door to where his electorate is. But so a year ago, the government said that they were going to embark on 2 new centres. Since then, we've seen not $1 in the budget, no planning timelines, no understanding of what the actual composition of these structures look like. So we will work with the government on anything that can help in the youth crime crisis. But announcements don't fix things. Follow through and attention to detail does. And we've been putting forward those solutions I mentioned to you before. And thought bubbles and announcements without detailed follow through won't heal the crisis. Listening to the community and properly resourcing our frontline officers will. Jared, did you want to say something on that?
Well, thank you, David. Yes, the government have announced what they call a youth detention centre, or the new terminology the Labor government are using are therapeutic centres for young juvenile offenders. This is the history of this. They announced a youth detention centre in Caloundra, in the heart of Caloundra, in the tourist district. they announced a youth detention centre. It was championed by the local member of parliament there, Jason Hunt, the Labor member of parliament, who incidentally worked at Woodford. And he was championing a youth detention centre in the heart of the tourist district in Caloundra. And of course the community were up in arms, the LNP opposed it, we led a campaign against it. The government then promised Queenslanders they were looking at other alternative sites. So we've just seen this announcement. I've spoken to the local member, Andrew Powell, the member for Glasshouse, in terms of Woodford. Now, understanding that Woodford already has a maximum security adult detention centre. So Andrew now will go and work with his community and consult his community, understanding that there is already a detention centre there. But this is the chaos of the Labor government. They just cannot get things right. They announce things, they make announcements, but then they've put no planning into it, and the youth detention spaces in Queensland are a prime example of that. They announce it in Caloundra, they spend over $1 million, $1 million fitting the Caloundra Youth Detention Centre out, and then abandoned it 1 year later at a cost of over $1 million that we know of, by the way. So this government cannot be trusted. They cannot be trusted in the youth justice space.
That's all. Thank you all, guys. Thanks very, very much. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Very good.